What is up, everybody? Welcome to another edition of Drive for Show, DFS for Dough here on RotoGrinders, bringing you another week of golf talk. Had the wacky and wild team event, Zurich Classic, last week. Was nice to see the shot tracker work throughout the tournament, so that was a pleasant surprise. But it seems like they've got the bugs ironed out of the shot tracker after a lot of years of wondering why we couldn't have it at some of those events. Nice to see them get that rolling for the team event, the Zurich Classic last week. And nice to see Andrew Novak and Ben Griffin pop up for debut wins. I believe Noto mentioned that very fact on the show last week. So they ended up getting it done at 28 under par for a winning score. Really made hay in the best ball rounds with a 62 and a 61 in those rounds. So nice to see them get the win. Of course, I'm Justin Van Zuiden, as always, joined by Derek Farnsworth, aka Notorious. Noto, how you doing?
Yeah, doing good. Ended up having an outright on them. Played them a lot in DFS too, so pretty good week for me. Wasn't on the Højgaards. They talked about them as being one of my favorite fades because I didn't think they could both play well at the same time, but they managed to accomplish that feat last week. But yeah, it's kind of a fun event, a little bit different than what we're used to. Any strong takeaways from you?
I think 1.4% was the 6 of 6 percentage in the big $15 buy-in contest or whatever it is. 1.5%, and I think 9% or so 5 of 6. I did 20 lineups. I think I had no 6 of 6 and no 5 of 6. So I had quite a few fours. Did have a few that cashed. But no 5 of 6 or no 6 of 6 when everybody was making birdies. That third round basically put me towards as either min cash or nothing with most of my lineups. Just way too much exposure to basically all the the popular teams that missed the cut. EVR and Seabez, I had quite a bit. They missed on the number. I actually didn't have Morikawa and Kitayama, but they missed too. That was a big one for a lot of people. You in Vegas whiffed on that one. Had quite a bit of Zach Blair and Fishburne, Garrick Higgo, Ryan Fox. I mean, just going down the line, Doug Gim and Chan Kim. So way too many landmines hit me last week.
Yeah, I ended up only doing one lineup. Ended up getting 5 of 6. Doug Gim and Chan Kim were the guys that got me. But yeah, it was really tough to get 6 of 6 through, like you mentioned. And with scoring being so low on Saturday, you kind of had to have at least 5 to have a decent chance at a good cash. But yeah, I'm ready to move on to this week. We finally got a regular event back.
Yeah, regular event back in the mix. So we've got the Byron Nelson, which is also the CJ CUP now. I think that branding changed last year. This used to be the AT&T Byron Nelson throughout the years. So you may get confused if you see CJ CUP. That used to be a fall event that I believe was played in South Korea for a while. But they've kind of co-branded it with the Byron Nelson here. So TPC Craig Ranch is the host course for this week. We've given a few barbs to it on the show in previous years. The course is relatively boring. There's not a whole lot of excitement with the venue this week. So that kind of stinks, even though we do get the regular, full field, full cut event back in the mix. And with this kind of being a lull in the schedule, right, things pick up again as we get towards late May and June. This kind of tends to be a period where I believe we've also got an elevated event next week. So you're seeing, most of the big names taking this week off. It's the Truist Championship in Philly. Yeah, so it is a elevated event, new one next week. But pretty weak field this week. Not a super exciting course, but everybody's dealing with the same player pool. There's still money to be won. Somebody's got to win it. So if you're winning money, it doesn't matter whether you're winning it with Rory or whether you're winning it with Jake Knapp. So it's an even playing field for everybody. So we will try to bring the snake draft back into the mix tonight. I know a couple weeks ago we had to cut a little short, and then last week DraftKings did not offer the snake drafts for the team event. So we will try to sneak one of those in tonight. So tell your friends. Probably not going to take us a ton of time to get through this. A half an hour or so from now, we'll try to hit up a snake draft for this week. So stick around if you're interested in that. But yeah, I mentioned, the course here is relatively bland, boring by PGA Tour standards. Guys tend to tear it up, but what do we got this week?
Yeah, kind of bland, but it's a long course at least. That's par 71, just under 7,600 yards. In terms of difficulty, been one of the 7 easiest courses on the PGA Tour each of the last 4 years. So definitely going to make a lot of birdies this week. The recent winners, Pendrith at 23 under, Day at 23 under, and then KH won it back-to-back years, 26 and 25 under. And all 4 of them had really good weeks with the putter. The fairways here are pretty wide, so it does lend itself to being favorable to the Bombers. There's not a huge penalty for missing the fairway, although there are water hazards on 13 of the holes. The greens here are pretty big, pretty easy to hit on average. Last year's green regulation rate was 72%, which is 6% higher than the tour average. Even though you're hitting a lot of long irons into these greens, again, they're just easy to hit. And when that happens, when you get a birdie fest, when everybody's hitting greens, it often comes down to a putting contest. So I don't mind looking at some good putters this week. I do prefer the Bombers, but I'm not necessarily avoiding all the shorter hitters. I do think guys that can be good with their irons and good with their putters can contend here. Really not a lot else to say. Maybe guys that play well in Texas.
Yeah, I'm on the same page this week. Certainly want guys that are going to score. So the winning scores at this event. So this is the 5th time that this course has hosted. But the first couple of times they played it as a par 72. They changed one of the par 5s into a long par 4 to make it a par 71, which is just semantics, right? Par is just a number. So the first 2 editions, the winning score was -25 and -26. If we convert that to the new layout, you take 4 strokes off the winning score with it being a par 71 now. So it would have been -21 and then -22. KH Lee won both of those. And then the last 2 years with the newly adjusted par 71, Jason Day at 23 under and Taylor Pendrith at 23 under. So effectively the winning score has gotten to 21 under or better each of the 4 times that TPC Craig Ranch has hosted. They did lengthen a few more of the holes this year. So it does look a little more daunting on the scorecard. I think it's up to 7,560 yards, something like that. But with guys hitting so many fairways and greens, it's just going to be tough, absent a ton of wind, for this course to provide too much of a stern test. But we'll see what the week brings. Of course, the wind does tend to pick up sometimes in Texas, so keep a close eye as we get closer to Thursday. I admittedly have not checked that yet. Have you seen a wind forecast yet?
Yeah, I was just looking at it. Very little wind on Thursday and Friday. Could get some rain on Friday to soften the course up. And then the weekend, not a whole lot, 10 to 15 mile per hour sustained, 15 to 20 mile per hour gusts.
All right. So, yeah, it looks like it will probably play with similarly strong, that's a tongue twister, scoring conditions as it has in prior years. If you did build your lineups early, super early, there were a couple of field changes after the pricing came out. So Keith Mitchell, Joe Highsmith, and for some reason, if you're interested in Brant Snedeker, those 3 guys have withdrawn. With this being the week before an elevated event, there is certainly a chance that we might see another, hiccup or 2. Guy withdrawing, if he's not feeling well or whatever the case may be. Just be sure you're keeping an eye on the PGA Tour communications. Twitter feed is a good one. They usually get those out fairly good notice nowadays. At PGA Tour Comms, COMMS on X, if you're looking for that, or just getting some golf guys in your feed. A lot of times you'll get those coming across your way. So if anybody else withdraws, generally try to make sure we get that word around on the social media before Thursday morning. All right, with that, it's enough shenanigans. Let's go ahead and dive in. And I mentioned it's a weak field, so Jordan Spieth is the 2nd most expensive golfer. That tells you about all you need to know about that. But we'll talk about him in a minute, because even though it is a super weak field, Scottie Scheffler is teeing it up here. I believe he made his first ever PGA Tour start at this event, 6 or 7 years ago, 8 years ago, however long that's been now. But he's $13,300 on DraftKings. That is hurricane pricing, the surge pricing on Scottie Scheffler in full effect at $13,300. He is $2,800 more than anybody else in the field and $3,300 more than anyone else not named Jordan Spieth. So I present to you the discussion of, hey, if we start with Scheffler, I'm down to $73.40 to spend on average for 5 additional players. Whereas if I start with, say, Taylor Pendrith at 9,600, I have over 8,000 to spend per remaining player. So 13-3 Scottie Scheffler is the first decision you basically have to make before you do anything else. What are we doing with him this week?
Yeah, I'm locking him in. I do this a couple times a year, going 100% Scheffler. When I run my model, typically the top guy in the model is like rated 85 to 90. He's got 99.1 rating. The next closest is 81.7. And I was just looking at his odds before we hopped on the show. His odds to finish in the top 5, minus 165. His odds to win are like plus 275. I know it's a birdie fest, and that can bring more variance and tend to lean on the putter a little bit more. But man, he's been awesome with the putter. I think he's gained at least 4 strokes putting in 3 of his last 10, something like that. So I think I'm locking in Scheffler. I don't love the 8Ks or the 9Ks anyway. I think there are a lot of plays in the 7s that are comparable to the 8Ks. So for me, locking in Scheffler. What about you?
Yeah, so I actually like the balanced builds quite a bit this week. And when I was kind of rolling this around a bit in my head, I saw the 13-3, which is obviously the first thing you're going to see. And then I saw like 42% projected ownership. And I can't wrap my brain around paying 13-3 for a guy that admittedly is the most talented golfer in this field, but 13-3 in GPPs. A lot of those lineups that start with Scheffler are going to look really similar. I don't love the 6K range, and I just don't love the builds that I make with him in it, let alone if he's going to be 40% plus. And the guy hasn't won this year. I mean, he's been fine. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that he's not still the best golfer on tour or the second best golfer on tour, but and second, fourth, and eighth, the last 3 starts. But an 8th is not going to get it done at 13-3 when all your Scheffler lineups are going to look fairly similar. So I think if you're building a cash game lineup, you put him in. If you're in GPPs, I think you got to go underweight on that number, right? I'm not going to say fade him entirely if you're building 50 lineups or 100 lineups. But I'm thinking half the field, 20%. It hasn't burned me yet this year. I don't think I've been overweight on him for much of the year. In Houston, where he finished second and made a ton of birdies, that week, I don't remember the optimals if you needed to have them or not, but I'm not going to argue with anybody that says, hey, I'm locking him in and, I'm taking what effectively is 60% odds or whatever that equates to of a top 5. But I just think it's going to be tough to hit the optimal in a GPP with Scheffler, especially if he doesn't win. I don't know. That scares me, but I think that's where I'm at.
Yeah, I think it depends on where the winner comes from. I mean, if he finishes top 3 and we get a long shot winner, then he can still make the optimal. But, I mean, there's a chance he wins and still doesn't hit the optimal if none of the cheap guys come through. So I see both sides of it. I don't like being on the opposite side of you. I like when we're agreed on Scheffler. We typically tend to be on opposite sides of Scheffler, and there's no rhyme or reason to when one of us hops on and one hops off. But
it's tough. It's tough because a lot of the decisions right this week is just almost obviously he's going to grade out well no matter what projection system you're using. So it's simply a game theory decision, which I tend to be a little bit more of a gambler on that front sometimes, which I just see 13-3 and 40%. And, I'll take my chances and hope he finishes like 7th or 8th instead of 1st.
Yeah, I've been doing that this year too. I haven't played him yet, at least over the field. So this will be my first Scheffler equation. I think it's just for me, I don't like the 9s and 8s probably as much as you do. And
yeah. And I do. So yeah, that jives, that expectation jives. Another thing that you maybe could consider, right, is if you've got lineups that get off to a good start. I know a lot of people that do some hedging between DFS and sports betting if you can. I know Noto and I have talked about it on occasion on the show. A lot of times if somebody gets off to a really hot start, the odds get a little bit wonky. So if you get, I'm not trying to say a name specifically, but somebody in the morning wave on Thursday, goes out and shoots 9 under or something. And then all of a sudden, maybe Scheffler's plus 275 to win becomes plus 400 or something like that. Scheffler doesn't play until he's one of the later tee times in the afternoon. So somebody gets off to a hot start and his odds get a little bit worse. I'm not going to bet him at plus 275, but if he gets to plus 400, plus 500, plus 600 at some point, and you've got some lineups that are doing well and you're underweight on Scheffler, throw a bet on Scheffler to win, and at least you get that. So I'm probably going to have that, especially since he starts in the afternoon, have that thought process in my back pocket too.
Yeah, I like that a lot. If you are planning to bet him, I definitely think you want to wait until the morning wave's done, because somebody will go out there and post a 9 under.
Yeah, sure. Somebody's going to shoot a low round on this course.
Yep.
Just a matter of figuring out who. And if you're in the business of betting first round leaders, you can try to figure out who that might be from the morning. But aside that, I was just trying to make the Scheffler point of him teeing off in the afternoon in a group with Siwoo Kim and with Jordan Spieth, who are also some of the most expensive options on the board this week. So, and I do poo-poo Spieth pretty much every week on this show, pretty much without fail. But if you have listened to this in the past, this has been the one event where I have not besmirched his name quite as much as some other events. I must admit that in the last 4 to 6 weeks, if we go back 24 rounds, Spieth is 5th in this field in total strokes gained and 22nd off the tee, 15th in putting, and he's always played well in Texas. He's played well here. So I don't despise Spieth this week as much as I normally do, especially if you're not playing Scheffler. So I can't. I guess I'm just going completely off the rails here this week. It's not an all-out endorsement, especially because he's 10-5.
That season really did a number on you.
It did. It fried my brain. I got my teeth cleaned this afternoon. Maybe I'm just going a little loopy here, but because he's 10-5, like if Spieth was 9K again, I'd probably be in this week. Whether or not he makes my player pool still remains to be seen.
Oh, okay. I thought you were saying
I'm not. Yeah, I'm not locking him by any means, but especially if you're not on Scheffler, like I think you can make a case for him this week. Then Sungjae's our only other golfer above 10K. I mean, I imagine you're not doing much here if you're locking Scheffler.
Right, not playing either of them. Sungjae, so he was 5th at the Masters, but he played in Korea last week, missed the cut. Now has to fly all the way back here. So I don't really love that. Hasn't been great other than his last 2 events. So I'll pass on Sungjae. I agree with you on Spieth. If you want to get a little bit different, start with him. He could definitely pop here. Appreciate top 20s, but just by the nature of my lineup builds, I can't afford him.
Yeah, so again, you might see Spieth in my player pool. I'm out on Sungjae this week as well for the reasons that you mentioned. I'll have some Scheffler in my GPPs, but I will be underweight. So that's the stance I am taking. So I will be underweight, assuming the ownership at anywhere near 40% is accurate, right? I'll probably be half of that. And now, if for some reason Scheffler comes in at 20-25% ownership, I guess I won't be that underweight, but I don't think that's going to happen. So we'll see on Spieth. Might end up making his way into my player pool. And then we kind of go down in the 9s where, again, if you're playing Scheffler, you're probably not getting a whole lot here. Because if I try to start with Scheffler and Siwoo, you're down to 68.25 per player for 4 players. And I promise you're not going to find 4 guys in the 6s that you feel super confident of. Okay, I'm going to play this Scheffler and Siwoo lineup and get my 4 value plays in the 6s that I feel super great about. Now, could you get an optimal group out of that? Sure. But it's going to require a little bit more guesswork on that value range. So if you're not playing Scheffler, Siwoo is my favorite starting point. He's a local, resides down here, has had really good results here the last couple years. We know he tends to play the same course as well. So he's 9,400. You've got Pendrith is going to project well also at 9,600. I believe he's the defending champ too, if I remember right. Feel like this is where Pendrith won. Yeah. So Pendrith 9,600, defending champ. Benyon, Sam Burns are the other guys at the top end of the 9K range. Keith Mitchell has withdrawn. Jaeger, last week's winner with Andrew Novak, Ben Griffin, Mackenzie Hughes, and Rasmus Højgaard. I guess he's in the 8s, but that rounds out the 9K range. Again, presuming you're probably underweight on most of this group, but that aside, if you had to pick a name or two in the 9Ks, who do you like?
Yeah, I'm going to try to get a little bit of Benny on, a guy that bombs it out there, back-to-back top 15s here. Don't mind the Siwoo call. I think it's a good course fit for Jaeger, too. He won in Texas last summer. My favorite play here is Mackenzie Hughes. So he's a guy that's always been known for his short game. But if you look at his recent results, he gained 6.7 strokes tee to green at the Heritage, finished third, 6.8 at Houston, finished 10th. Was positive ball striking at Valspar, too. So a guy that very good short game, very good putter. He's been getting it done with the ball striking. So if he can, marry that with a good putting week, I think he could be interesting at 9,100. And I built a couple lineups with Scheffler and Hughes, and you can do it. Doesn't feel great, but you can do it. Then Griffin, I'll probably be underweight just because he won last week. I think, after such a grind all season, he played 13 straight weeks trying to get into the Masters, didn't end up getting there. Now the first win, I think it's just going to be, a little bit of a letdown week for him. But my favorite is Benyon.
Doesn't really fit the bomber mold either.
True. Yeah, Benyon, Hughes, and Jaeger, probably my three favorites.
All right. Jaeger I like as well. Siwoo I will have quite a bit of, and then I'll probably sprinkle in a couple others because, again, I'm a little higher on this range than Noto is this week. And if I'm underweight Scheffler, we got to spend that money somewhere. So we'll sprinkle in a handful of those guys. All right, as we go down in the eights, I just mentioned Rasmus Højgaard was not having a good year at all. Basically didn't have a top 20 since Phoenix, but teamed up with his brother, and the brotherly chemistry got them a runner-up finish last week, one shot back. Will Zalatoris, Tom Kim, Ryan Gerard, Jacob Ridgman, Jake Knapp, most of your upper part of the 8K range. And if you're playing Scheffler, you can, pretty easily get one of these guys in. It still becomes fairly doable. I'm playing the bomber angle this week, so Knapp would be my favorite. Was really impressed with him last week. Had, by all accounts, a weaker partner, if you want to, not trying to besmirch anybody, but ended up with a strong finish and always tends to do better in these bomber type, birdie fest type events. He was 6th at Cognizant Classic in beginning of March, 12th at the Players. So we've seen him pop for some top end finishes. Tends to be a little bit inconsistent, but I like him more in the birdie fest. So Knapp at 84 is my favorite. Who are you liking in the 8s?
Yeah, I like the Knapp call. A guy very boomer bust, but you mentioned third place last week. A bunch of top 10s. He was top 10 here last year too. Ryan Gerard isn't necessarily a bomber, but he's been playing some great golf. 4 straight top 30s if you include last week's team event. Zalatoris and Tom Kim, both Texas guys, but I just don't know if I want to pay that price point for him. Kim hasn't been very good. Zalatoris, I don't know if he can make enough putts to win. I can never trust the Højgaards because I never pick the right one, so I just tend to, avoid them both. But I don't know. I mean, Ben Griffin finally got the monkey off his back. Maybe Eric Cole can get going. He's been much better form recently. 4 top 30s in his last 4 stroke play events. If you don't count the team event last week, and then he was T23 here in his only appearance. And what are you doing
all over the place? He was so good last year, and he was so terrible in like February and March, and now he's been good again.
Yeah, it tends to be streaky. What are you doing with Harry Hall? Seems like anytime you get an easy course, he shines, but he's not necessarily a bomber.
Yeah, I don't mind. I'm concerned because he played in the Corrales a couple weeks ago, and he was in like second or third or right there in the mix after Friday, and he shot 75-76 on the weekend and finished T49. So, and that's been a trend. Like if you look at his last 4 events that he's played, he's only had 1 weekend round in the 60s, his last 8 rounds. So I like him. I mean, I tend to play him more than most, maybe not as much lately. But boy, I'm a little bit concerned with the way that last event finished. He's in my multi-entry GPP pool, but I think if you're doing like a 3 max or 5 max, he's probably just missing the cut.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. Seamus Power has good course history. I might mix him in a little bit. Nobody's going to play him because he feels expensive, but he's had some good finishes this year.
Yeah, I think he's another guy that tends to play well in these weaker field birdie fest type events too. That's when you've seen him pop a little bit more in the past. All right, it's good for the 8s. Let's go ahead and talk about the upper part of the 7s. Interesting names in here. Some guys that maybe popped a little bit more during the, say, fall swing. Stevens, Hoey, Kevin Hughes been playing pretty good golf lately. 2 months ago, if we threw this pricing out there, like Kitayama would be the guy that everyone was targeting, but boy, missing the cut with Morikawa last week. We've just seen nothing from Kitayama since probably going back to the fall swing. Yeah, in the 2025 calendar year, Kitayama doesn't have a single top 30 finish on the PGA Tour. So I think I'm out on him right now, but what are your thoughts on the upper sevens?
Yeah, I'm out on Kitayama as well. Rico Ho is an interesting guy. Might be the worst putter in the field, but if you look at just bent grass splits, he's actually top 50 in this field, and these are bent grass greens. Probably one of the better ball strikers. So don't mind looking at him at 7,700. If you want to play the bomber angle, you got Thor Bjornsson. I think both those guys are viable in tournaments. I always like Sam Stevens in these types of courses, and it seems like he's been this price no matter what the field strength is. So I like him. And then Taylor Moore is number 12 in my model. He's just been a consistent cut maker. Maybe he can show a little bit more upside now that the field is weaker. He kind of does a little bit of everything well. Nothing that special, but I think he's underpriced at 7,500.
Nice of you to say you got you if you're looking for a bomber, but I am certainly not a bomber by any means, unless you're talking about, bombing with a terrible score. But all kidding aside, yeah, Kevin Hughes probably my favorite in this range as well. We'll probably sprinkle in Hoey just because I tend to play him a little bit too. Stevens, these are guys that Moore is certainly the guy that's become the most consistent in here. Matt McCarty played pretty well at the Masters too, so don't mind looking at him. And this is the range that if you're playing Scheffler, right, you're going to have to roster several guys in the sevens and even the lower part of the sevens. But that's where I think a lot of those lineups are going to look similar because you're going to see people start with Scheffler and maybe Moore, maybe one of those guys in the eights that we just talked about. So do think about maybe if there's somebody down here you want to play that's a little bit different, a little bit off the board in terms of ownership. I might help differentiate those Scheffler lineups a little bit. As we go into the bottom part of the range, Gary Woodland, normally an interesting name that I would target in this type of course, but he's been dealing with a little something again. Hasn't been playing quite as well lately. You've got the Chan Kim, Doug Gim, pretty popular value duo last week that missed the cut and burned everybody. They're basically the same price this week. Noto's boy Toasty in the lower part of the 7K range here. So some interesting names to talk about. Anything else you like in the sevens?
Am I on mute? Okay, so we're good. So I was just looking at the tags. I pulled up both of our tags in Lineup HQ. We share one tag in common this week, and it is Toasty. I did not expect that to be the case. So yeah, we talked about Toasty in Texas being a thing. He did miss the cut here last year, but he gained 6.6 strokes tee to green. He ended up losing like 6.5 on the greens. And then if you look at his recent results, gained 7.1 ball striking in Houston a couple weeks ago. Then gained 11.3 tee to green at Valero, another Texas course, career high in tee to green numbers. So yeah, I'm on board with Toasty. I think he's been a popular bet in the outright market, so I could see his ownership getting inflated a little bit, but I still think he's a good play. I like Davis Riley quite a bit. He's a two-time winner. Hasn't been great like over the last 2 years, but if you just look over the last few months, he's been pretty good. Couple top 10s. T21 at the Masters. He's got a top 10 at this course as well. So I do like Davis Riley. The guys that project well in my model, you mentioned them, Doug Kim, Chan Kim.
They're truly a partnership forever now.
And then in the lower part, yeah, Bo Hosser, who just hasn't been very good this year. So I don't know. I like a lot of the names in here. I probably won't have a ton of them. If I'm going all the way down to 7K, I like Hayden Springer quite a bit. He's a bomber that's been pretty consistent, making cuts this year, and then a couple of good finishes at this event.
Yeah, so you hit on a few of the guys that I like. Valamaki's another guy that's been playing well, 4th, 12th, 18th, his last 3 events. Had some wins on the DP World Tour, tends to play better in shootouts. So I like him in addition to Riley, who you mentioned. I'm always going to target some Ryan Fox on a driver heavy course, though his recent results, I'm not going to go all out there, but I do like him. So those are some names that they tend to fit well, even in those balanced builds, right? You get, if you like a few guys in the nines, maybe you're getting up to Spieth, but not quite getting up to Scheffler. You can mix and match a few of those guys in that 7K range, and hope to hit the optimal if Scheffler's not in the winning lineup. But if you are rostering Scheffler, so this is where it gets tough for me, and part of the reason why I rationalized not wanting to play Scheffler at 13-3. 73, I would definitely play Scheffler, but 13-3, you probably need, one guy in the sixes, particularly if you're going with another higher end play. You definitely need somebody in the sixes, and I just don't like it. I stopped my last tag again because I'm underweight on Scheffler. 7,300 was as low as I went with my tags this week, but it's a whole lot of guys in the eights and nines. So I have not found myself reaching down into the sixes. It'd basically just be trying to pluck a name out of a hat, like a Bramlett or a Phillips, or somebody that can hit the ball a long way. But I don't love it. I'm not going here. You're probably having to go here a little bit more than me. So I presume to reconcile our differences this week with you playing more Scheffler than me, that you at least found somebody down here that you find serviceable.
Yeah, I like a few guys. One you mentioned in Bramlett, pretty good course history, pretty good distance off the tee. The putter's been a little bit better this year too. But I always talk about one guy who you play on courses where around the green doesn't matter. Do you remember who that guy is?
Not off the top of my head, no.
Carson Young. For whatever reason,
right.
He's like dead last around the green. But anytime you get him on these courses that you don't have to chip a lot.
I saw Kevin Roy's name right at the moment you mentioned that, and I knew it wasn't him, and I just got distracted by seeing Kevin Roy, so I'm going to blame that.
He's played here twice, T30, T14. So I like Carson Young. And then the guy that projects best for me, Danny Walker. He's been hit or miss, but pretty good results on the Korn Ferry Tour. A couple top tens recently. He was T12 last week with Ryan Gerard, so played pretty well in the team event. And if you look at his stats, pretty long off the tee, top 15 in approach in this field. It's a pretty small sample, but I think he's a guy with some upside at 6,600. And then after that, I'm going to be playing a few of these guys in my builds to try to get Scheffler with a couple of the expensive 9K guys, but none that I feel particularly great about.
Norman Zhang, 12th in Puerto Rico a few weeks ago.
I saw he got in. Somebody withdrew, so he got in. So hopefully he can get going.
He got in because everybody that wants in, anybody with any sort of status that wants in can get in this week. I'm selling the tournament just a little bit short. It's not to that extent, but
Mac Meisner and Johnny Vegas were a lot more expensive at one point.
They were. All right, let's see if we can finagle a snake draft here. So if you're not familiar, we go to DraftKings, we find a 6-man snake draft. So filter by golf, go to snake draft, search for $5 6-man, which right now there does happen to be an empty one, which is great. Hopefully we don't get one that's got a squatter. So right now there is a $5 6-man that's 0 out of 6. If you are not interested in sticking around and watching us discuss a live snake draft, feel free to hop off, but do get that thumbs up button on YouTube a click before you exit. Do appreciate that very much. And of course, appreciate you watching, checking us out, whether you're watching live or watching us on playback. So, all right, I have entered the snake draft. Presume Noto's entered the snake draft. We're at 3 of 6 now. And we'll hopefully get that rolling. It'll be a little bit of a challenge in this field, but hopefully we can get 6 people to pop in. If we can't, we'll call it a night.
So you planning to go like 20% Scheffler?
Yeah, that's my plan right now is 20%. So probably no more than 25. Depends on how it runs after I finalize my player pool. So
it's a great example of you don't have to completely fade guys. You can be underweight. You don't always have to take huge stands.
Yeah, I don't not particularly interested in being guaranteed basically a $0 return if he does win. If I can get one that does have the right value pieces, I don't want to waste a week where I get the right value pieces. So I'll put some lineups where I have those value pieces in that I like in with Scheffler, and we'll build some that way. So how I would normally do that while we're waiting for this to fill, we're at 4 of 6, so a couple people hop on in. But some people may wonder like how I would do that if I'm intentionally going underweight on Scheffler. So what I would actually do on a week like this is if let's say I'm going to do 20 lineups and I'm going to do 20% Scheffler, and I'm going to do 4 Scheffler lineups. I would run the optimizer with him out and get 16 lineups that way, and then I'd hand build 4 Scheffler lineups with the preferred lineups that I like around him with my favorite values and whatnot. So I do love using our lineup HQ tools to build my lineups, and most of the weeks I'll just let that generate all of them. But in weird weeks like this where I'm doing something like that, I might hand build a few Scheffler teams too. So. All right, 2 more. We're going to give it another minute or 2 if anybody wants to hop in here, but maybe I oversold the strength of this tournament. Everyone knows that they're hosed if they don't get the first pick. I guess I can't say that after what I've been saying about Scheffler. As I will fill time by looking at the current. Haven't checked the live odds to win the NBA Finals at this point. Nor do I know if I can find them at the moment. Way too many market. There we go. NBA Finals winner, Thunder plus 150. Celtics plus 200. Cavs plus 500. Everybody else is a long shot.
Doesn't seem like there's a lot of value if the top 2 are plus
150, plus 200, plus 500, and a whole lot of long shots. Plus 4,500 on DraftKings for Steve's Knicks. We're stuck at 4. If we're stuck at 4, I might have to wave the white flag and scrap it another week. Nobody loves the Scheffler only invitational, I guess.
It's all right. We'll get back at it next week.
All right. Well, I might stay in here for a minute. If it fills, we can do it offline. But otherwise, yeah, we'll go ahead and call it a week, so we're not sitting around scraping up conversation points on hoops for 10 minutes. But all right, with that, we'll hop off. As always, thanks to Noto for joining me. Thanks to Steve for producing behind the scenes for us. I'm Justin. Hope you all have a great week. We'll be back here next week. New event, elevated event, new course. Should be a lot of fun. So check back in next Tuesday. Again, hit that thumbs up on YouTube. Check us out, RotoGrinders.com. For Steve, for Noto, I'm Justin. Take care. We'll see you later, everybody.